Hi guys, this is Mrs. Bolin with your notes for section 2.3, parallel lines and transversals. So for the warm-up, says draw a diagram showing two parallel lines cut by a perpendicular transversal. So two parallel lines, and the way we show their parallel is by putting the little arrows on, and it's cut by a perpendicular transversal. So I want to make sure that I put that it is perpendicular with the little box right there. Label all the angles with numbers, and then what's the measure of each angle. So if I put a number in each of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then find the measure of each one. Well, if they're perpendicular, 90 degrees, then this one's 90 degrees. Alternate interior, 90 degrees. They're all 90 degrees, right? So the measure of each angle would be 90 degrees. They would all be the same. Anytime we have two parallel lines and a perpendicular line runs through one of them, it would also be perpendicular to the other line. Okay, so our notes for today, we're going to talk about two new pairs of angles. One would be corresponding angles, and those are also congruent, just like the ones from yesterday. Remember, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and vertical angles. All of those pairs are congruent. Corresponding angles are also congruent. And so the way you get corresponding angles is if you take, I'm going to write in pencil so I don't mess this up. If I take this group of angles and slide it down so that it lands on this group of angles, any one that would land on top of the other one would form a corresponding pair. So for example, this is in the upper left corner. If I slid it down, it would land on the 6. The 6 is also in the upper left. Okay, so 1 and 6 are corresponding angles. 2 and 5 would be corresponding angles. 3 and 8 would be corresponding angles. 4 and 7 would be corresponding angles. So you can either think about it visually, like just taking this whole thing, sliding it down and seeing where it would land, which ones would be touching. If I just took this and went, or you could also think about like upper left, lower right, and do the same thing down here to get to the corresponding angle. Same side interior are the only ones that are a little bit different than all the other pairs we've been looking at. So remember when we talked about interior angles, I said, well, think about, here's our two parallel lines. Interior would be everything between the lines, right? So that's interior. Well, same side would mean if this is the transversal right here, they're on the same side of the transversal. So like 4 and 5 here would be same side interior. Okay, 4 and 5, also 3 and 6 would be same side interior. And the thing that's a little bit different about this relationship is they're not congruent to each other. They are supplementary. And so this is where alliteration is our friend, that same side interior angles are supplementary. Supplementary means if you add them up, they make 180. They're not equal to each other, but they add to make 180. Okay, all of our other relationships, congruent, right? But when we have same side, that's supplementary. Okay, hopefully you can remember that. If not, just look in your notes. Okay, so here's some things that you might want to underline is that corresponding angles are congruent and that same side interior angles are supplementary. So remember that congruent is, use that little mark right there, means congruent. And angles that look the same when we have the situation of parallel lines cut by a transversal, the angles that look the same usually are congruent to each other, equal, and angles that look different in this situation where we've got parallel lines cut by a transversal, the angles that look different usually add up to 180. So you've got 4 angles that are tiny angles, less than 90 degrees, acute, and you've got 4 angles that are big angles that are greater than 90 degrees, that are obtuse, and all of the acute angles are congruent to each other, all of the obtuse angles are congruent to each other, and every acute angle is supplementary to every obtuse angle, meaning that they make a straight line or 180 degrees. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice some problems here. So use the diagram to identify all pairs of the angles of a given type. So if I want to talk about corresponding angles, I would say if I take this little group of angles and I slide it over, what's the 1 going to land on top of? The 2, the 3, and the 4. What are they all going to land on top of? Okay, so angle 1 is in a corresponding position to angle 5. So angle 1 and angle 5 would be on top of each other. 2 and 6 are in the same position. Angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 3 and angle 7. And then angle 4 and angle 8. Okay, the same side interior, they're also called consecutive angles because it comes one right after each other. So this time, this is a little different than our problem in our notes, because our problem in notes, the parallel lines were like this. Now our parallel lines are like this, right? So what I have my students do is kind of say, here's the interior, and then I want same side interior. So that would be 2 and 5. Sorry, I kind of colored over it. 2 and 5 and 4 and 7. Hopefully you can still see that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write it as angle 2 and angle 5. And then we've got angle 4 and angle 7. Okay, for letter C, it says which angle pairs are congruent and which angle pairs are supplementary. Okay, so all of these ones are congruent. So I'm going to say these ones up here are congruent. All the corresponding angles are congruent. All of the same side interior ones are supplementary. Whoop. Okay, there's lots more congruent pairs that I could name, but for right now, looking at just the ones in this problem, those ones are congruent, those ones are supplementary. Supplementary, again, remember, adds to 180. Okay, question number 2 says write an equation and solve for x. These are corresponding angles, because if you look at this little group of angles and this little group of angles, this is in the upper right and this is in the upper right. So they correspond to each other. If I took this group of angles and I slid it along that line, the 117 would land on top of the 4x plus 9. So I'm going to go ahead and solve that one. So 4x plus 9 is equal to 117 degrees. So I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. So I have 4x is equal to 108. I'm going to divide by 4 on both sides. And so I get x equals 4 goes into 10 twice. With 2 left over, 4 goes into 28 7 times. So short division, we get x equals 27. Question number 3 says write an equation and solve for x. These ones are same side interior. Okay, so remember, same side interior adds up to make 180. So the way that we start this equation is a little bit different. 3x plus 1 plus 3x plus 44. When I add those up, I get 180 degrees. So now I'm going to combine like terms. I've got 6x plus 45 equals 180. I'm going to subtract the 45 on both sides. And so I'm going to come up here, 6x equals 135. Is that right? Yeah, and so we get x equals 22 and a half. X equals 22.5. Okay, question number 4 says find the measure of each numbered angle and explain. Well, I know that these ones are supplementary. They add up to make 180. So I'm just going to go 180, take away 63 is 117. So angle 2 is 117 because I know it has to make 180. Okay, so you could say measure of angle 2 equals 180, take away 63, which is 117 degrees. Okay, well then 1 and 63 are corresponding, so I know that they have to be equal to each other. And so I'm going to write that the measure of angle 1 equals 63 degrees because it's corresponding. Okay, and then this one was same side interior, or you could say consecutive angles. That also means the same thing. Okay, question number 5, find the measure of each numbered angle and explain. 1 would equal 95. Measure of angle 1 is equal to 95 degrees because they are vertical angles. And the measure of angle 2 would equal 95 degrees because they are corresponding angles. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started on your homework. We're just going to do the odd numbered problems. Hopefully you can figure out the even ones on your own by looking at the odd ones, and that could give you some clues. All right, question number 1. So we are on page 30. This is your assignment for 2.3. In problems 1 through 3, find the measure of each numbered angle and explain. And then once we get to 4 through 8, we'll actually be solving. So for question number 1, I know that the measure of angle 1 is equal to 87 degrees because those are alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles. Angle 2, I have to do a little bit of work here, right? I know that it's a same side interior, so I know it's supplementary. So I'm going to start at 180. I'm going to take off 87, so that takes me down to 93. So 180 minus 87 equals 93. So 93 degrees because they are same side interior angles. Okay, question number 2. Oh dear, there's a lot more. I'm just going to write them on here, and then hopefully you guys can put that all in Canvas. Oh no, we're skipping number 2, just kidding. But feel free to write in your book. Like for number 2, we know that's 81, it's a vertical angle. And then when you go to Canvas to enter it, you can list them all out. There's not a ton of room in your workbook for those problems. Okay, question number 3. I know what, I've got a lot of stuff going on here, right? I've got 2 sets of parallel lines that intersect each other, kind of like transversals. So 45 and 1 are corresponding. So I know that this is 45 degrees because it's corresponding with that one. Well, this one is also corresponding with number 1. So I know that it's 45 degrees because if I slid this over, it would be on top of that one. So this is also a corresponding angles. And then question number 3, this one, or angle number 3, those are same side interior, so I know it has to add to make 180. So I'm going to go 180, take away 45 is equal to 135, and that's the value for number 3. And those are same side interior. Okay, we're going to skip number 4. Question number 5, we're going to solve that. Well, remember when it's a same side interior, when they're both in between and they're on the same side of the transversal, they add to make 180. So I'm going to go 7x plus 24 plus 72 equals 180. So I'm going to add those up. So that makes 96. So 7x plus 96 equals 180. I'm going to subtract 96 on both sides. So I get 7x is equal to, what's that, 84? And then divide by 7, so x is equal to 12. Question number 6, we're going to skip, but those are corresponding, so you just set them equal to each other. Question number 7, another same side interior set here. So I'm going to set those, I'm going to add them and make it 180. So 46 plus 4x plus 40 equals 180 degrees. And the degrees is kind of off there, so we don't have to put that, but 46 plus 40, so we have 4x plus 86 equals 180 minus the 86 on both sides. And we're going to get a decimal here. 4x is equal to 94. So divide by 4 does not go in quite evenly. It goes in 23.5 times. Okay, question number 8, we're going to skip because that's an odd one. That problem is going to be very similar to this, where they are same side interior. Question number 9, it looks like we just have to find everything. So these two are corresponding, so we can set them equal to each other. So I have 10x plus 5 is equal to 8x plus 25. I'm going to solve for x. So I'm going to minus the 8x on both sides. So we get 2x plus 5 is equal to 25. Then I'm going to subtract the 5. So 2x is equal to 20. Divide by 2. So x is equal to 10. And then we need to plug back in to find the value. So if I know the value of x is 10, I could plug that in right there. So 10 times 10 is 100. 100 plus 5 is 105. Well, then I know 2 would also have to be 105. And I know that 4 would also have to be 105. And then 1 and 3 would have to add with that to be 180. So it's subtract 105, and so that would be 75. That was a lot of work, you guys. Okay, question number 10. You guys are going to have to do that on your own, but here's something to consider. Ping says that you can't really figure out angles 3 through 6. And what I'd try to challenge you to think about is, do we know if those lines are parallel or not? Remember, all of our things are corresponding angles, same side interior, alternate interior. Those are only true when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal. So make sure you look to see if they're marked parallel or not. All right, have a great day and see you next time.